Okay. Let me record real quick, and then I will kick off our roster review. It's for Alex Computer Whiz. Hey, Alex Computer Whiz. Welcome to your Dynasty Daddy Roster review. Before we get into everything, I just want to say you are officially the first live Dynasty Daddy Roster review. This is kind of just a test of my normal live stream stuff since I have a bunch of new equipment and I built a new computer recently. So a lot of new things going on, but you get to wear that as a badge of honor. But typically, what I'll do for a roster review is I'll read the form you submitted. Then we'll take a look at the war tool, kind of understand what your format says about your league and where we need to make our bets. And then lastly, we'll kind of look at your team, at your league, kind of talk about general roster construction. The way I see it, there's a lot of different ways to play this game. But, again, you are asking for my opinion, so I will give you my opinion there. And two, if there's any, since it is a middle of the day, like this is my lunch break, I figured there might not be a ton of people in chat, but if there's anyone that does hop on, and we might take some feedback and questions from them. But if there's anything outside of the scope of your roster review, I will do that after the recording. But the live stream will also be on my YouTube channel, so you can watch the whole thing. But this will just be snipped down to what your roster review is. Additionally, if you haven't joined the Discord yet, it's a great spot to catch up on everything that we talk about, any updates on the site. And then there's also over 1,000 people constantly talking dynasty trades, theories, thoughts on players, anything like that. So definitely join that, completely free. So I definitely recommend joining that if that's what you want. And then also we do have a Patreon. This is another way I keep the lights on. But $6 a month. There's a free week trial. You get league infused trade values, cross league management tool, a bunch of other features, ad free experience. If that's interest to you or you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Probably best to reach out to me in Discord. That's probably the easiest way to reach me. But anyway, without spending any more time, let's jump on into it. Let me pull up the power rankings real quick. So your league is a PPR Superflex, 0.75 tight end premium, 10 teams start. Start 10? 10 teams start 10. You also have one defense, which we won't really talk about. We also have a 0.2 point per carry. I feel unsure about the upcoming rookie class and would also be open to trading my first and second away for the right strategic move. Today I'm looking at JSN, but unsure if that's the right fit for us. I feel like we need another weapon. I'm also looking to sell Tyreek if we can find the right deal. I don't recall. Okay, I think 6th or 7th. Below. Oh, okay. That's for last season. You finished 6th or 7th. Below 22, Roman's army is fleecing most of the teams in the league. I was about to say I booted this up pre-live stream just to kind of get a look at the league. And yeah, I mean, I was like, how does a team end up with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and then add Neighbors, Harrison, Brock Bowers, Bijan Brees? I mean, there needs to be a mutiny against this team. But yeah, that's always going to be hard when you borderline have a super team, even though my power rankings don't say that. And you can probably thank the Confederate Army, which is a questionable name, but you can thank them probably for not letting this team get the super team tag, since this team looks pretty bad. Okay, so let's see. Looking like a super team. It's tough to trade with him. I want to avoid strengthening opposing teams who I might face into playoffs. It's 4 out of 5 activity. Look at some strategic trades, some players you think would sell high for the right price, and provide some recommendations on how to play the rest of the season. Either try for playoffs or a semi-rebuild. I'm struggling with how to navigate the rest of the season. Need some input. Let's see. In 2025, I have a first, second, a fourth, and you said you would like me to stream it. And that's why you are here on my first live roster review. But anyway, so basically what it looks like from a high level is your team is kind of a contender, and I assume it looks like. Let me double check the trade. Where is it at? Playoff calculator. I assume 6 teams make the playoffs, which means that you're kind of like right on the cusp. Anyway, let's jump to the war tool. Let's just look at your format real quick. I'm not going to go into super deep war theory and all of that. There's other people that like to dive into that way more than me. Basically, the way I like to approach it is I like to look at different ranges of war and say, based on my scoring settings, like how valuable is a certain range of player, and then how confident do I feel like I can bet that I can get that player, right? And really what we see this year is running backs are kind of king. And you can see that right here. We have this red line. That's running backs. I mean, it doesn't even cross any other line until literally running back 34. So what this tells me is I just need to smash every running back I can in this format. And you also see, like, obviously, like Lamar Jackson's the best player. You also have Jamar Chase after that crazy week. But typically, Superflex, you're going to care about quarterback a little more, but I'm going to really narrow that lens of top-end quarterbacks I care about in this type of format. And then kind of like wide receiver, I kind of like, but it's also just a much more flat range. You mentioned there's a 0.75 tight end premium. That's how you see, like, the top-end tight ends are actually outproducing most of the wide receivers in that format. So in general, like, the way I would look at this is I'm obviously going to want to construct a contender around solid running backs. But the thing about running backs is you can always get it for cheap, right? You can always get like an Aaron Jones or a Chuba or players like that for pretty cheap that actually are going to produce a lot of value on your week-to-week roster. So kind of when I'm building this, I'd like to obviously get elite quarterbacks, but I don't want to get stuck with the mid-tier quarterbacks, right? The ones that, like, what's the difference between like a Geno Smith and, I mean, Baker was always my go-to, but now Baker's kind of been elite this year. But like for example, like a Bo Nix and like a Sam Darnold or Trevor Lawrence. Like, if I have a Trevor Lawrence, like, what's the difference between Trevor Lawrence and Kirk Cousins? Probably nothing in my league. But in general, that's kind of how I use it. Is like, if I bet on ranges, like, how confident am I in picking a top 10 running back, and how impactful is that to this league? And you see, like, basically, if I get any sort of valuable running back that plays, it's going to matter. And that's where you see, like, the 0.2 point per carry, things like that you mentioned. It's going to amplify the value of those running backs. And an easy way to really visualize that is to come down into this filter positions here. I like to just, if you just toggle, right, and you say, okay, elite or better players. I mean, there's probably just eyeballing, it's like 16 elite or better players this year at the running back position. Quarterback, there's 7. Wide receiver, there's 2. Right, so really can tell me in this type of league, I can kind of probably fade a little bit of my wide receivers. Tight ends, obviously, you have the Kelsey, Bowers, Kittles. And Kelsey's really been flying up the board. Defense doesn't matter. So, like, that's kind of how I would address it. Really, if you're going to contend, you're going to want to build out a robust running back room, and then have either top-end quarterbacks or just any quarterbacks, to be honest. So that's kind of the way I would approach this type of league, especially since it's 10-team. Like in a 12-team league, I care more about that, a wider range of, like, okay, top 12, top 14 quarterback. But outside of, like, if I'm getting an elite guy, I don't really care in a 10-team. Like the difference between them is very small. But anyway, let's take a look at your roster. So what we got Jordan Love, Jared Goff. So, I mean, both I think are pretty solid. You're pretty comfortable with both of them. They're a little lower. I mean, I think Love has that elite upside ceiling, but also it's kind of like a little volatile. But obviously Jared Goff is kind of like the definition of a slightly above average quarterback when he's not throwing 5 interceptions. I'm fine rolling them out. I doubt in a league of 10 teams you're going to get much for Goff. That makes you would want to move him. I would say, in general here, usually in a Superflex league, I'm like, just stash as many. hey, that's my wife in the chat. Thank you. usually in like a super flex league, I want to have like a bunch of quarterbacks, right? Like I want to stash as many backup quarterbacks. And there's a lot of guys down here, like Gardner Minshew is literally the starting quarterback here. Mac Jones is starting. Like stash all those guys, but it's kind of harder to corner the market in a 10-team league. I wouldn't care about that as much. Audio only through the left side. Okay, appreciate you letting me know that. I don't know. Okay, I'll have to look at that in a second. Or I'll mess around with that in a bit. But anyway, so yeah, usually I like to stash as many quarterbacks as I can. But with running backs, like in the 10-team league, I'm really just going to stash all the running backs, right? Like Sean Tucker, Wilson, Akers, White, Goodson, like all these guys should be rostered in this type of format just because we know, including the point per carry. I mean, I'm sure if we look at like Goodson with the point per carry, you know, he was putting weeks that are completely startable when Jonathan Taylor was out. So any running back that's one injury away, I'm stashing in this type of league. What really stands out for me from a bottom is you have so many wide receivers and not like they're good, but none of them are really elite. Like outside of Tyreek Hill, hopefully. But Tyreek Hill probably won't. I don't want to say probably won't, but also like I'm not super confident in him carrying me through the playoffs, right? So like how I would look here is I'd really want to consolidate, right? Like you're talking about moving your first for like a JSN. Like I think adding JSN to a room of Devonta Smith, Zay Flowers, a room with Dunze is just adding another one of them. Like you're not really helping yourself here. You know, if you could take like a Zay Flowers and a first and go up and get that next tier of player, then I would feel a lot better. Because right now you kind of have like Jacoby Myers is a good start. Calvin Ridley has been doing pretty good recently. Watson, I mean, who knows what's going on in Green Bay. So really what I would try to do is get rid of a lot of these guys or tier up off of them using ideally my second. In a format like this, right, where you only have 10 teams, if you're going to finish 6th or 7th like you did last year, you're probably going to end up with a top pick, you know. Like, even if you make the playoffs and your first team out, you're still getting a top 5 pick. Or I guess it would be what? The 105. Which is still going to probably be a quarterback or running back in this deep running back class. So I'm not really desperate to move off my first unless if I can like convince someone that has really, really big numbers, you know. So we can kind of look at that. Kind of some options there, right? Like I think CeeDee Lamb's a good example, right? Like sure, his value's a little depressed because Cooper Rush is out, but the fun part about Dynasty is like redraft's all about picking the right bet, right? It's all about am I getting the right player to win? Where in general, you know, like in Dynasty, like I feel like the optimal Dynasty roster is one that has the least amount of value in players and has the most future value, right? Like if you can win the league while having a team that has almost no value in players, you know, like that team is set up to succeed long term because you have so much flexibility going forward and you won. So I'm, you know, basically needless to say is like CeeDee Lamb was wide receiver 1 like 4 weeks ago. And now he's potentially viable with kind of a Zay Flowers plus a first or something like that. Like this guy may be desperate. Sitting there at 10-10 saying CeeDee Lamb's not performing well. You could probably go to him and say, and he also doesn't have a 25 first. This could be an opportunity to tier up. And in a format like this, 10 teams start 10, a little bit more shallow. I'm more inclined to go and try to move up and get that type of player. So like that's kind of where I would look at. Especially since like we know there's a super team, right? We know there's a super team. I'm not saying give up, but I'm also not saying like go all in, right? Because we have to play the game of like this team is like borderline cheating. I don't know how you have Marvin Harrison Jr. on your bench, but this is the world that we live in this league. You don't have Bowers. I thought you had Bowers for a second. But yeah, like this team again is like kind of crazy. I'm not trying to realize all my assets right now. I'm trying to say I want to make the playoffs. I want to be able to have the week to week variance potentially help me get lucky, right? Maybe Devon Achane goes off. Maybe Devonta Smith has one of his crazy games. Maybe it goes all right. But I also want to know that, cool, like I can go to bed at night knowing that if I, run into a buzzsaw in the playoffs, it's not like I don't have anything in the future to look forward to. And especially since where you're sitting, like you mentioned how you don't think the 2025 class is that good. I promise you, I'm not saying it's going to be amazing. I'm not saying it's going to be bad, but I am saying that I know for certain it's going to be like better the closer you get to it, right? The closer we get to it, people are going to be like, man, I really wish I had a first round pick. So if you have your pick, and I think a good way to kind of visualize that as well is if we just go in here and we can look at 2024. Or do we not have? Maybe I filtered those out. I guess they got filtered out. But I mean, we can easily look at 2025, 2026, 2027, right? And we can see over time, it doesn't matter if the draft class is good or not. People just want the flexibility of a pick. It's just slowly going up. And this, right, this red line is a 2026 pick. It's almost to where the 2025 was last year. So it's just kind of like the safest asset in the game. So I'm not looking to desperately get off of it. Even if you don't want to take it, someone will definitely come by and say, here's something for it. But if you can use it to go up and get like that elite range of guys, which if we're looking at wide receiver, which honestly, like, I'll be honest, I don't think if you're serious about winning now, I don't think you're going to really have many options to move up. Like if first on top of Smith, I'd be looking at like AJ Brown, maybe Puka, but like like all of these are frankly kind of owned by the same guy, So like maybe a CD Lamb, like I would try for the CD Lamb. Like I do Zay Flowers in the first and get CD. Does that work? But I'm not looking to try to just get a JSN. Like you already have 5 wide receivers within the 41 to 58 range. You already have so many guys here. Like adding another one's not going to do much. If you actually do want to use a first to get a player that matters, it's going to be like, okay, let me send my first to get like Derrick Henry or something like that. Because we know with the point per carry or the 0.2 point per carry, that's going to really boost a lot of your scoring and output. And if you really want to try to push all your chips in, buying a Derrick Henry, buying a Christian McCaffrey type, that's the win now move. But in reality, like I think this team, the way I would put it is like you're probably in the playoffs, right? I think you're in the playoffs right now. We can look at the simulator, right? Like you're in the playoffs a little bit. You have this one team that's kind of hovering around, but you're probably going to make the playoffs. There's only 7 teams that are really trying in 6 spots. But I'm not trying to push my chips in. I'm trying to say, okay, cool. If anything, can I get extra value from all these wide receivers I have that I don't really need or I can't even start, right? Like a Tyreek Hill. You're like, cool. Like, can I, like, if you could add something to Tyreek and get a first, that's what I'm doing, right? We could look at some trades for that as well. All right, so if I go here, Tyreek Hill, let me do super flex. I don't really care about all the other settings right now. But see, like 2 seconds, like this is the type of deal. Even if it's a late first, like can I just get something for Tyreek Hill before he falls off to like Stephon Diggs territory? But that's probably the thing I would really try to do is say, okay, I'm probably in the playoffs. Even if I finish 7th, I'm barely miss it. But the goal is to make the playoffs and then just let variance take over. But you have way too much value at wide receiver right now to really feel good going into next year, right? Because like, what's next year look like? Okay, these guys are borderline cuttable. Like, can I get anything for them? But then like you have a Christian Watson, a Ridley, like Calvin Ridley's going to be 30 next year. Jacoby Myers, like we don't know what the Raiders are going to do. T. Higgins, he's probably someone that I would feel good holding just because he'll probably end somewhere and get a value bump. Like I feel like Smith, Flowers, and Dunze and Higgins, I'm fine rolling with it until next year. But I'm also open to moving one of them. Like, could I move Hill for a first and then can I move one of these guys for a first? And now I get 2 extra firsts for the future. the production drop from going from Zay Flowers to Jacoby Myers, probably not big, right? I just start Dunze and Myers now, and then I get 2 extra first, and then I know in the future I can kind of be building up steam as this Romans Army team hopefully starts, waning off a little bit, or at least doesn't look as unbeatable as it does right now. Because when you're battling up against a super team, you're kind of out of a lot of options. But that's kind of where I look at it. I mean, in general, we know the most valuable position by far is running back. I do agree that you should really clear up a lot of these wide receivers, pick up these running backs, look for potential tier ups, which we can kind of mess around with the trade finder and see if we find anything that we like. See, I don't really want to move my first, just because even if you sit on it, you're probably going to get something pretty decent. But let's look for wide receivers and running backs, right? Okay, can I do Zay Flowers in a second and get, a Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, those would be kind of win now pieces, which I don't hate. I think those, and if you probably look at it, right? If we look at the contender view here, really boost your odds to make the playoffs. You jump up to number 1 at the running back position. I don't hate it. Don't know why this would really change. We're not moving a quarterback, but I don't know. But in general, I would sit here and say the running backs look really similar. Basically we're saying the Zay Flowers equivalent in running back is not as impactful. And I think that's kind of the win now move. I'm just trying to hold on to my first, right? There's a certain threshold of player I need to have before I move it first. And frankly, no running back is probably worth a first in my mind. I just feel like the security of a first versus even if a Bijan goes out and suffers a massive injury. I mean, we've seen, we saw Nick Chubb's not the perfect example, but we saw Nick Chubb. We've seen players have these, even at higher value positions, like a Rashee Rice and things like that, suffer bad injuries, and then everyone's just get rid of them for super cheap. And to me, I kind of subscribe to it's not always as good as it seems. It's not always as bad as it seems, right? A bad injury happens. Okay, let me be patient. Let me play it smart. A player's doing amazing. Okay, maybe I don't buy in right now. Maybe I think about different options and different ways to play that, just because a lot of times you can buy the hype or sell in the dip, and then really just look back in 6 months and be what in the world was I doing? But I think that covers generally all the things I have to say. But again, I appreciate the support. It's always great, and I know someone in chat told me my audio is a little messed up, so I apologize to your right ear. It says apparently only the left side has audio right now, so I do need to look into that. But I do appreciate you supporting me. I hope you have a great rest of the season, and let me know if you have any follow-ups. Okay. There we go. And that's the end of the recording. So you said there was some audio issues. I'll have to mess around with that and see. Cuz I just got all this equipment last weekend, I guess. I finally pulled the trigger on building a new computer, and then I was like, "Oh crap, all my roster review stuff is messed up." But I figured might be a good time to actually get around to trying to do more live streams and building out content. Not super extreme, but another reason why I put over here, I put on the sidebar a bunch of videos and things like that. So I figured it'd be a cool way to kind of engage with everyone more, because there's a lot to do on my site, but then there's also kind of sometimes I hit these mental walls of I don't know what to do next. But anyway, I think that pretty much covers up everything. Probably got to get back to work and grab a quick bite. But appreciate everyone for tuning in. I plan to do more of these. Hopefully not during lunch and work hours. So I'll have to fix the audio and come back better than ever. So thanks